Thursday. My name is Sid. I'm co-founder CEO of Wizehire. Welcome again to, and thanks for joining us. We're going to have I think a very fun dialogue diving into AI bias hiring, a practical framework for fast and fair and better hiring outcomes. We're going to make this a very, very practical, fun 30-minute session with space for a Q&A in the back. Before we get started, a couple thoughts. We have the Q&A that's going on. Our team is going to be in the chat as well to answer questions that come up. And then everything today will be recorded and available for those that aren't able to make it or have to jump. Time is scarce, so let's just kick things off. I want to first off kick off and welcome my good friend Raj Patel. Raj, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those who aren't familiar with you or Holistic AI.
Hey Sid, thanks so much for having me. Hey everyone on the webinar. It's great to be here. My name is Raj. I'm the VP of AI Transformation at Holistic AI. We're an AI governance company, which means we help organizations of all kinds deploy AI responsibly, with confidence and at scale. We test for things like bias, privacy, robustness, security, so that you can move forward with your AI deployments with confidence, knowing that you're compliant, as well as prioritizing the right use cases with the right guardrails. What I'm hoping to bring to this conversation through questions that we'll have in conversation with Sid is a wide view across different industries, problems that they're facing, across financial services, healthcare, insurance, but also HR and general technology deployment. What I'm trying to bring is some tangible real life examples to the table and hopefully some insight to you. Great to be here.
This would be a lot of fun. I know we were just chatting a few minutes ago. Again, for everyone, I want to frame up the dialogue a little bit. We at Wizehire, we have conversations with small businesses every day, and AI is a hot topic. There's a lot of excitement. There's some appropriate anxiety. So maybe Raj, just to first level set, you work with organizations of all sizes, and I think one of the opportunities we have today is really to just kind of fast forward all these learnings that you've had from working with Fortune 500s, with large organizations, down to Main Street companies that can, get a leg up, can, kind of learn from all the challenges, some of the mistakes maybe even. You know, Governance is so much about risk. Maybe the first thing, if you could level set for everyone, there are people that are on a very wide continuum in their journey with AI. Some that have been using it for several years, some that are occasionally using Google and ChatGPT. How should a business owner, a hiring manager, just think about the risk and frame up the use cases where it's appropriate? Do you have a framework here just generally for people to kind of have in the back of their minds?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first thing to point out is whether you're a large organization operating across multiple jurisdictions or a small organization that's just getting started with AI, you should think about it as the great equalizer in terms of technology and deployment, something that everybody can use, but you need to approach it with the right mindset and with the right intent for your business. So the first thing that I like to call out in terms of frameworks and thinking about AI deployment is you are the expert of your own space. You will know the best places where AI will be able to be leveraged to its full potential because you understand the key pain points in your business. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the inefficiencies? Where are the repeatable processes where AI can really be deployed to its utmost? So this is really thinking about the business that you're operating in rather than the hype cycle that AI is portraying. I think you really need to think about solving problems specific to your needs and then applying the AI technology to help plug that gap. So that's definitely step one is in your framework of thinking, you should apply your business knowledge to the business problems and then look to see the AI technology that's going to solve that. Second, then is risk drivers. How much risk are you willing to introduce into your ecosystem and what is the potential uplift? Because adding any AI technology into your business is going to introduce some level of risk, and you really need to understand what kind of guardrails you can put in place so that you can operate that while maintaining some sort of reasonable risk inference into your business. And then finally is fully understanding the compliance of the ecosystem that you're deploying in. You don't want to be caught doing something where it's something that's fundamentally opposed by regulation in any given market. So those are the kind of three things that I would want to have at the forefront of your thinking when deploying AI.
So Raj, we'll definitely get to hiring later in the dialogue, but a lot of our business owners they're in regulated industries, right? We've a
Hmm.
lot of customers that are in law, a lot in healthcare, a lot in like, financial services. And, one thing I think you mentioned, just to double click in, is it's the industries, there's regulations, there's a lot of like different jurisdictions. What's the responsibility for, me, the business owner, the manager implementing these systems, and how much should I lean on the vendor? What's like that line that you kind of draw out of curiosity? Because again, there's shared responsibility here. I suspect.
Yes, yeah, there is a certain level of shared responsibility. Um, Speaking practically, there is a and I want to be careful what I say here because there are some vendors in the market who are very pragmatic and open to
Yeah.
helping deploy responsibly, but a number of them are not. We all heard the term of black box models that have unexplainable outputs, and therefore it does fall on the shoulders of the business owner to realize that when you deploy AI into your business, that reputational, regulatory, and compliance risk does fall on your shoulders. And before you execute, you need to press your vendor for certain requirements, or you need to have your own testing in place or guardrails in place to make sure that you're adhering to. So I would say in a perfect world, it would be 50-50 collaboration and a good sharing of information. In reality, you really need to understand that this is your business, it's your reputation that's on the line. So you need to be comfortable with what you're deploying and not rely 100% on vendors to provide you that information.
So, we have a lot of small teams, and you work with large organizations. There's a dedicated role for someone that manages this. How can
Mhm.
a small organization, do an adequate job? Like, any tips or tricks or advice? Because it's
Yeah,
a
of
big
course.
responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, uh, kind of leveraging a point that I said earlier, small businesses actually have a meaningful structural advantage when it comes to this kind of playing field that's often overlooked. And that is they are so much closer to the decision-making process than a large organization where somebody who is in charge of deploying an AI application versus someone who's using it may be totally disconnected. But in a smaller business, they may be sitting next to each other or they may be the same person. So
Yeah.
they have a big advantage in that sense. My practical advice is that each of these people that are trying to deploy AI should have those kind of three questions. So first, do I actually understand what this tool does? Not the sales pitch, but the mechanism. And I'm not advocating that everybody needs to become an AI expert, but you should have a basic understanding of what the AI system is trying to do. Is it pattern matching? Does it require historical data? Am I using synthetic data or proxies that I haven't had a good chance to scrutinize yet? These are those kind of core foundations that you will have a good understanding of because it's your business, it's where you sit, it's what you're doing. Second is if the vendor is providing testing, have I had a good look at what that testing looks like? Is it around fairness, bias, security, toxicity, robustness, these types of risk that are specific to AI? And having a cursory look is at least a starting point, and having an understanding is better. But everybody has a day job that they have to try and stick to as well. Realistically, any credible vendor will have some level of documentation around it. So you need to make sure that you have at least looked at it or somebody in the organization has looked at it. And the final one, the final of the three that come to mind is, do I have a simple, regular check-in process to make sure that the AI is adhering to the mechanisms that I wanted it to? You don't need a formal audit, that's for sure. It can come in when the time is right, when it gets to a large enough scale. But you just need someone that's often the person that's deploying or buying the AI system or creating it to periodically check outputs, make sure that it's aligning to what you want it to do. And if not, have that conversation to see have we deployed the right technology.
I like this last point. At Wizehire, we've moved towards a AI business development rep online, and
Mhm.
one of the things that I think we've done is we almost work with our partner qualified almost like one-on-ones, like that you
Yes.
previously had with an individual. Now you're having with the vendor just to make sure these systems are working. So I love the practical nature of that. You know, a lot of our audience, they leverage Wisehire's AI for hiring. We're seeing a lot of, benefit here, but obviously there's, like it's a very regulated space. What's your perspective on like where AI can really deliver value when it comes to just the hiring process? People know my perspective on it, but I think hearing your viewpoint and like the thousands of companies that y'all work with would be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if we look specifically for hiring, it's a domain where AI is really like ripe for full application. It's a particularly high stake environment granted, but the decisions are consequential and often irreversible in the short term. So when I look at, something like a misscored loan application, that can be appealed. There's something that happens after the fact, and it's something that you can roll back. But when it's a candidate that's had a rejection letter or has been overlooked from screening, this is something that is hard to reverse. And so AI has a lot of power to be very, very influential in the whole process, but you need to have the correct guardrails in place around
Yeah.
this. So the reason why it's something of such massive benefit to companies is that if you do the deployment right, the compounding benefits of it grow over time. So something like building a company, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, composition,
Yeah.
culture, that's
Yeah.
the one. Company culture, that grows over time. And if you're hiring the right people, if you set your AI systems up to identify the areas that you find culturally beneficial to the business, you start building that culture up, and then you have compounding returns on that. So it has a fantastic flywheel effect on businesses that are using it appropriately. But the key is making sure that it's used appropriately, because the opposite can happen very quickly. If you have something that you're not deploying with the right set of training data, or if you make an incorrect hiring decision, that can have detrimental impact. And that's why having human in the loop and strong governance processes in place are so key to deployment.
So Raj, I mean, you said the magic word, human in the loop. We have a perspective on this, but like what do you see as like the best practices when when leveraging, let's say, human in the loop for hiring specifically? Like where is the balance for what ought to be delegated to the agent or should
Hmm.
stay with the hiring manager? What's your perspective
Yeah.
there?
This is a really interesting one, because the concept of human in the loop has changed so drastically over the last just 12 months even. I was going to say even longer, but 12 months, where human in the loop was a requirement, large language models are judged, then became the default, and now we're looking at not human in the loop, but human on the loop. We're looking at agents that are doing way too many decisions, or too many agents operating in ecosystems that it's almost impossible to have someone checking these outputs. But if we go back to in a hiring context, human in the loop is an underspecified phrase when it comes to governance. What it means is not having someone rubber stamping decisions, but having a well thought out governance process that introduces human oversight at decision points that cannot be reversed easily. So that responsible AI thinking needs to be put in when making decisions on offering a candidate positions, or offering packages. Those are things that you can't roll back afterwards, and that's where human in the loop needs to be. The human reviewer must have genuine authority to override an AI. It's not confirming what an AI has put, a genuine authority to override, and must feel culturally safe in order to do so, and do so effectively. I think if your organization treats AI recommendations as a default and human as a deviation, that's a recipe for disaster. It's AI is information to elevate a human thinking approach that gives you more information to create the right decisions at those points in time.
So Raj, we didn't really chat about this, but I'm kind of curious. We're a lot of people are starting to leverage these agents, and they're prompting often for like needing permission, and we're getting very
Mhm.
used to like like in the coding context of just saying yes, yes, yes. What concerns do you have about that kind of behavior being normalized and these AI systems? Because again, like
Yeah.
reversibility of code is very different than like hiring decisions, and I personally worry about like are we taking that mental shift from platform to platform or whatever the case? What are you seeing there?
100%. I mean, I don't want to be too specific on myself here, but I see it in my own behavior. We were saying, yes, do you approve this output? This email has been redrafted for me. I'm now becoming way too comfortable with just giving it and sending out to clients. So this is something where, governance is not just technical guardrails and stuff. It's also considering the training and upskilling of users in terms of effective AI deployment, understanding its shortfalls, understanding where you need to have a consistent thought process when it comes to utilizing these tools, because they are designed to make you feel like the answer is exactly what you want it to be. So when it comes to this, you need to have training in place for the end users that are going to be using it. Make sure that they understand what the limitations are, and make sure that they understand that checks and balances need to be in place when you're deploying. So I would not underplay the significance of being well upskilled personally, as well as your workforce, making sure that they are suitably trained on the AI systems that are being deployed.
Raj, any pointers, again, back for like practical tips on the training? Any resources that you're seeing that are maybe like great for someone to like take? And obviously, we can share to anyone that's like watching the recording later, that they could just take and apply in their business. Any particular that come to mind?
Yes, there's a number of learning resources that are provided by OpenAI, by Anthropic. Our company, Holistic AI, does training specifically for AI governance for organizations. Some of it is targeted at the EU AI Act and its deployment, but we are looking at slightly wider training as well. There's
Nice.
also a platform called Deep Learning AI, which has some really good, useful, responsible AI modules in there as well by Andrew Ng. I would
Yeah.
highly recommend that.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. So I think we've talked a lot about the frameworks that people should apply, practically how to like ensure their team is, leveraging these systems. We talked about the context of hiring. Obviously at Wizehire, we're seeing a lot of like efficiency gains from it. But, for the back of the call, I'd love to hear a little bit of like like the hard-earned lessons that you have. Maybe we can pay it forward to the audience. So you've seen, so many AI deployments, some that work well, some that don't.
Mhm.
Any like, how do you distill the insights of, from all these deployments, all the client work that you've done? What should our audience take away to think about their project? Let's say, to make it practical, someone on their team wants to implement an AI feature for their sales systems. Like,
Mhm.
what are the things that should go through a business owner's mind to like ensure that project will be successful in some sense?
Mhm. So before I get onto the kind of specifics of it, there's one overarching main mistake almost that I see teams when they try to deploy AI systems, and that is treating the deployment as the finish line. Often there's a huge amount of work that's done, and holistic AI does a lot of it when we are helping to assess risk, build guardrails, get to the point of sign off so that it can be deployed at scale. But it's called a AI deployment lifecycle for a reason because it doesn't finish at the point where you deploy. You must have continuous monitoring, continuous questioning of whether this process is actually fit for AI deployment. Is the AI doing what you expected it to do? There's enormous amounts of energy, money, time that go into rolling out a tool, vendor evaluation, integration work, training the team, training the workforce that will be using it. And often that next part just goes essentially to some checklist exercise. Are we monitoring the bias metrics? Are we monitoring the usage metrics? AI systems don't stay static. The world does not stay static. You need to make sure that the system is still relevant, 3 months, 6 months down the line, depending on the risk so we classify systems based on the risk of who it's going to, the context it's deployed to. You need to make sure you keep an eye on that and retest regularly so that the economic conditions are still not the economic conditions, the economic assumptions that you made are still valid. The
Yep.
businesses that sustain value over time are the ones that repeatedly do that for their AI deployments. So that's probably the overarching thing. I'm not sure if it answers your question
No, I think it's
specifically.
it's it's good for everyone to take back, which is that, hey, pressing the go live button is really day one of a longer process. I think is the bigger takeaway here.
Exactly that. Outside of that, in your training and development cycle, you really need to have an understanding of your risk appetite. What are you hoping to achieve with this, and what are you willing to invite into the business? I say this because there is a very well-known trade-off between the performance of an AI system and the fairness of the AI system. They do not go hand in hand. You can optimize for a certain select group of individuals or training data, but that may not be this exact sample for the context that you're deploying in. So you really need to have understanding of that metric for your own business, for yourself as a organization. That is probably key that you need to have in mind.
So I love this kind of like hell of a way of thinking about things. I'm kind of curious, like if we were to, think about the small businesses where, it's a smaller set of people. It seems like a lot of like the larger organizations are primarily doing like top-down deployments. Um, how should a small business owner think about that? Because one, they don't have time to like think about every opportunity to leverage this. Their team often has the best ideas. How do you foster a culture where, the best ideas can be implemented when
Mhm.
there's all this risk to think about?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the questions where I will specifically talk about the holistic AI platform. I try my best not to, but this is one which we actually do pretty
It's
well.
good. It's good.
The idea is that you want to you want to democratize the ingestion of AI ideas at the ground level, basically. Everyone within the organization, when they're working on their day-to-day, will have ideas of where AI can be deployed, and you need a mechanism into how you ingest those. So what we do as an organization is we have very lightweight forms. These are configurable. You can design them how you want. You have the questions that you want, but you want to bring in what the AI use case is, what the technology is that would likely support it, and what the context is that you want to deploy it. With those three things, you can very quickly get a risk profile, a risk understanding of what you're introducing into the business. We benchmark against bias, transparency, efficacy, robustness, and security. And from that, you can then make an informed decision whether this is something you want to look into the market to purchase from a third party vendor, or something that you want to dedicate some time to build something in house. But you come from an informed point of view. It's not someone just sending you an email saying, "Hey, I think ChatGPT could work really well here." And you're like, "Okay, go for it." No, we want to know what you're trying to do, who it's going to affect, and this is the risk matrix that we're going to be benchmarking against. Is this something that I want to go for? So in this way, you can empower everybody to have an idea and put it forward, but then only prioritize what is within your own risk appetite to push forward.
Raj, I love this. Very simple framework. I think anyone can implement that internally. Here's another question, on the topic of collaboration in AI. I feel like we're at this moment in time where, uh, the knowledge that people have of how to use these systems is pretty spiky, right? Like,
Mhm.
everyone has their own use case. What have you seen in organizations that are better than most at sharing use cases and ideas? Like,
Yeah.
how are the best companies, teaching each other to leverage these systems? Like, any practical tips there?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is I would advocate for everyone in a business, everyone just to be upskilling themselves to some level in AI literacy. I think it's key. It's going to be a foundational thing for the future going forward. So I highly advocate if you're not, um, please, please do so. In a more realistic context of a business, you need to identify individuals within your organization that have that naturally occurring to them. There'll be people sitting in your organization who are just really keen on AI. They're reading the newsletters, they are up to date with this, and make them your AI champions. The businesses that we see excel with this the most, and whether it's a large organization or smaller organizations, they identify these AI champions who are the responsible people that often everyone else will turn to and say, "Hey, I have this problem. Could you suggest something that might fix this?" They are the ones who are identifying the use cases, bringing them forward, or even putting them into platforms like Holistic AI for assessment, and then disseminating that knowledge back down. They are trusted individuals that sit in the business layer, that have knowledge of both the AI technology, but also the problems that people are facing. So identify your champions, empower them with scalable workflows, give them an understanding of the risk profile, whether it's through platforms like Holistic AI or through other mechanisms. That is the fastest way. It's kind of a mix of the top down and bottom up approach.
I love this. Raj, we didn't talk about this, but I'm actually going to ask for a live reaction or something. I think this might be interesting. So, we talked a lot about the potential of these systems. I don't know if you saw this. This was some data Ramp shared, I think, last night on what
Mhm.
they're seeing amongst their customers in terms of the growth rate of companies that use the AI systems the most versus the least. Does this
Mhm.
tie out at all? Does it feel overly like biased towards their sample? Like, what's your take here? Because I mean, if this is the case, this is like incredible.
Yeah, I think I do align with this for sure. I think there may be some selection bias that goes into this because we know that there's a number of a huge percentage of the economy actually that ran so fast at trying to deploy AI without thinking about the critical question of where should AI be actually deployed in my business. So that goes back to that initial point, which is you are the custodians of your business. You know where the pain points are. Think about that first and then test the product. Not let's run with POCs. Let's buy 10,000 licenses for Copilot or GPT. Think about where the problems can be solved. I have a feeling that the large number of participants in that particular survey are the ones that did have a thought out governance process and are realizing the benefits. Because it's those companies that have thought methodically, not looked at the hype cycle, looked at their own businesses, and deployed effectively. I think there's something I was speaking to a client the other day, which was don't worry about being behind the hype cycle. Just ensure that you're on the curve, which is the hype cycle's up here, but the actual deployment curve is much flatter and much more realistic. That's where
Yeah.
you want to be. You don't want to be on that hype cycle. You want to identify what's actually driving value beyond that, and then you'll realize that 100% growth in your own time in a more realistic, more sustainable way.
What is like one of the best deployments that you've seen? Like any like just just to, like
Mm.
inspire the audience. Like what is one where you think like wow, that's this and of course anonymously implemented a system
Oh,
and
yeah,
then it just
this
works so
is
well.
so. I'll choose a couple actually, because there's one that we have a great partnership with a multinational global. It's a global name in commercial and retail goods. They came to us in 2021, and they were like, "We have a really thought out governance framework. We've thought about different verticals of the business. We have these champions that are chomping at the bit to try and get AI into their products." And this was pre-GPT, sorry, pre-Chat GPT in 2022. We helped them create scalable processes, and they really kind of flew with the responsible AI angle as the driver to innovation, not just POCs that they want because it's the next biggest thing on the market. They now have over 600 systems deployed globally. They are able to identify areas. They are one of our leading clients in terms of agentic deployment as well. So they are able to test the kind of frontier AI technology with the confidence that they have a strong risk process in place. They have responsibility, like they can name responsible owners of each system, and they have champions identifying areas that are going to help propagate the AI ROI as quickly as possible. Now, for smaller businesses, they are the ones that have a single specific use case that they really want to throw AI technology at, and they work with companies like Holistic AI to make sure that it's returning exactly as they expected. And that is true knowledge of their ecosystem, their requirements, their pain points. This is something where we can add a lot of value by doing deep dive assurance on individual systems and making sure that we are, like with Wizehire, as an example, we help you guys make sure that your AI systems are operating exactly as you intend and are delivering on the promises that you want for clients.
I love this. Raj, this was great. I know we wanted to like, focus the dialogue on kind of some of your lessons. These are a lot of practical tips. I know we had a couple of questions that were sent in before, and I want to be mindful as we, definitely want to give room for the Q&A. Actually, okay, so we had a couple that were sent in previously. We'll cover those. We'll also cover the ones that are in live in the chat. So if you are on the Zoom, feel free to use the Q&A feature. We'll answer those as well. So the first one was, my leadership is not investing in AI. What would you recommend I do to highlight the opportunity it presents for our company?
Mm.
Amazing question, Raj. Take it away.
The leadership is not investing in AI. So how do you
Yeah.
highlight the opportunity? I would say lead with outcomes, not technology. And this goes back to understanding the pain point. What are you trying to achieve? Leadership rarely gets excited by just the AI as a concept, but they really respond well to time saved, cost reduced, uh, quality improvements, and risk managed better. Because the more persuasive internal cases that I've seen have tightly scoped pilot proposals, one specific problem, clear success metrics that are defined before you start, not defined at the end once you realize what the actual AI system does. Define a time commitment. Those are often so with this large company that I spoke about before. Some of these are governance metadata that we are helping them build in at that ingestion process. So when people are filling out their forms, these are the kind of questions that they're asking. Like, how long do you think it's going to take in order to commit to this? Like, what is a rough ballpark figure? And we're not talking like, you need to know to the dollars and cents. Roughly, do you think this is going to cost X versus Y? This is all useful information that business leaders value above anything else. And the final thing I'll probably say, and I've gone maybe a bit long on this question, is also just worth framing the risk of inaction early. Inaction is key. If we were just to leave it as status quo, you have X, but if we were to do this, we have this upward trajectory of Y. So think about what is important to your business leaders and frame it in that regard.
I think that second point, just double on, I think is really key because, back to like, is this a thing that's going to drive growth or is this something that's
Mm,
going to like say have savings? And I think there's different ways to like position that completely. I also
hmm
think, we see this a lot internally. We talk about this, which is if you are, back to like this idea that best ideas come from all parts of the org, researching AI, trying to make the case internally, talk to some of the vendors, get their case studies. There's a lot of intel
exactly.
because, especially in small business land, we know that we're hyper competitive, right? We're thinking about the firm across the street and what can we do there? So yeah, that's a great
Mhm.
question. Raj, we had one more that came in. One of my employees wanted to load resumes into ChatGPT for sorting and evaluation. Okay, well, this is gonna be fun. I can't wait for this. I was opposed to this, but unsure of the right response. What are your thoughts? I've got my take, Raj. Maybe yours on just what can you put? What do you feel comfortable putting into ChatGPT? Maybe in the hiring context, and then broadly speaking.
This is almost a loaded question. So first of all, what type of license are you using? So there's the free tier, there's the premium tier, there's the enterprise tier. You really need to understand what your data, where your data is going. So if you're a smaller organization, you should definitely be looking to have at least the premium tier so that you can turn off the training of further data into ChatGPT's models. I think maybe even in the free tier you can turn that off. It's been a while
I
since
think it's new,
I've
yeah.
used. Yeah, so that is number one. The second thing is to know that the output from ChatGPT is not going to be something that's inherently explainable through the tools that are available to you. So if this is something that you're looking to do at scale, um, then I would say you need to really look at doing some sort of validation studies, like putting a whole bunch of synthesized CVs or historical data that you're happy sharing and understanding what the ranking is versus truth scenarios. So we did this process manually, and 9 times out of 10, this is aligning, and we're happy with that, and we're going to keep that. That is our risk tolerance as an organization. Of course, if you're just doing this as a one-off, I would say that you need to really scrutinize the output every single time because the deterministic nature, or the probabilistic nature of the outputs is something that's inherent to this type of technology. So please keep that scrutiny in mind. Don't just accept what comes out. Say, would this be the decision that I have made? And the final point, make sure that you're prompting correctly. Don't just say, just give me a. I don't like long responses from ChatGPT. Just give me the ranking in a list. Try and get it to explain what it's done, at least at that level, so you can see some of the thought process where you can extract that from the chat interface.
Yeah, but our take at Wizehire is that the technology is capable of playing a role, but I think the kind of instantiation of ChatGPT may not be the right place for this in the
hmm
context of hiring. What we do at Wizehire is, we provide all our customers with, EEO compliance out of the box for AI
hmm
models, where, there's all these tests and things that you have to meet at the scale of a 100-person company. And what we found is definitely, we're putting anonymous data in there. We're asking very specific questions. Does this person have this license versus is this a good or bad fit? That ambiguous question is, I think, where the risk really lies. Back to
hmm
Roger's point of like lack of explainability, lack of auditability. So definitely, I think to whoever asked the question, your knee-jerk reaction to kind of pause is great
hmm
in these really, really like high stakes situations. Um, Raj, we had a couple that were sent in previously as well. I want to make sure. I know we got a lot of questions. We'll follow up with everyone. How can managers assuage, fears from the team about AI replacing them? I know this is a hot topic, especially with the economic context right now. You and I are at different angles of this. What's your like just take on one, the economic concern that very real people feel, and then what can managers do to encourage use if that's going to be something that's going to be a deterrent?
Yeah, I mean, this is one where I'd say don't just tell them, show them, show your workforce what you mean by this. So the most common underlying fear isn't really will AI take my job? It's will I lose agency and relevance in how decisions get made? And then as a byproduct of that, that fear it becomes real about being replaced. The fear is addressable, but only through genuine involvement from management decisions that are being made about AI deployment, not just reassurance that, hey, we're not going to replace you. The most effective approach I've seen in the market is involving teams in how AI gets implemented, not just being that just that top-down approach, but understanding problems, building the solution together in a collaborative manner, which tools you're considering, what decisions they'll be informing, and where human judgment explicitly remains the final word. And I think that's key. It's like building that human in the loop framework, not just human in the loop points. Make sure that your workforce feels empowered by AI through both the onboarding, decision making process, and then the subsequent usage. I'd also I need to be honest and specific about what AI is actually being used for. Most businesses, in most businesses, AI automates high volume, repetitive, um, uh, structured data tasks. There's obviously use cases where we're seeing some really novel deployments, but those are the ones where judgment, relationship factoring in, expertise intensive work. That is where humans are still kings and queens of that remit. And so I would say don't be too I would say don't be too worried about this whole hype cycle around AI. The real tangible deployments are still in areas where it's going to make humans more efficient and it's going to empower humans. That is my honest view on that. I think there's a lot of rhetoric, and I understand the fear around it, but really look to see where AI is adding value, and then you'll see that you're going to become a more powerful human being rather than a replaced one.
I love that framing, and I'm glad you said the magic word task, because I really think it's a conversation about what are the tasks that you do that you should be freed up to do more, right? Like
Hmm.
at Wizehire, we have a customer success team that previously did a lot of work behind the scenes, and as
Hmm.
we've deployed AI internally, that team has been freed up to spend more time with clients, and I think that's like the way to kind of like step it out for individuals, and I think as managers, as leaders, we have to like give that directional arc of where things can go. Obviously, we don't have deep certainty, but we have teams that are reporting to us that are looking for career guidance and laddering. And I think we have to be mindful to say, like, look, it's the roles will be different, the tasks will be different. And I think it's, as you've said, it's where human judgment excels, is where I think like, the future jobs are. Hey, Raj, you've been saying hype cycle. There was a question that came in. This is the first time I'm hearing the term hype cycle, especially as
Hmm.
I think about something to distance myself from. Can you, share some examples where teams have ridden the hype cycle and what it looks like versus more prudent kind of like uses of AI?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, specific examples are the rush to buy 20,000 licenses at an enterprise level for ChatGPT without understanding which teams could actually be using it. You're committing to huge amounts of spend without understanding the data flows, the output, the validity of the output. Um, these are things where, you know, just because there is a lot of rhetoric around the technology use, business leaders often become aware that potentially they are falling behind this kind of curve of where the entire market is at and trying to rush too fast to deployment. Um, I always go back to this point that you are the custodian of your business. You understand it better than anybody else on the market. You will
Yep.
know if I use that example. And by the way, I'm not against ChatGPT. It seems to be the one that comes to mind the most when I come to examples. Um, you will know the most which teams will benefit from this the most. Start off with pilot programs, understand what the main pain points are, and see if you're actually addressing those with the technology, and be realistic with yourself. If you're not seeing the uptick that you are expecting, you need to roll it back. There's no shame in having tried something. That's why it's called a sandbox environment. That's why it's called a proof of concept. You need to have that true understanding of am I getting the return on investment? If not, why? Is it that AI technology is the wrong one? Often we see such complicated deployments being rolled out for such simple tasks that a full agentic deployment is done for where something like a simple machine learning model could have been used. There is no need to rush to the frontier when existing technology can solve that at a fraction of the cost. So this is what I mean by hype cycle. You can't turn on the news at the moment without seeing some new tool being rolled out by Anthropic or by OpenAI. Focus on your business, understand that to the nth degree first, and then look to see what tooling you can put out. You'll stay on your business curve rather than the curve of the next amazing tool that solves a very niche problem that the market has now decided to put on the front pages of the news.
Raj, I love this. bit of a follow-up. So, there's that MIT study that talks about like, AI deployment's not really working or whatever the case.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I think you're kind of hinting at this idea that like there's a lesson in every deployment. Maybe last kind of practical tip for everyone, like, hey, you tried something, maybe it didn't work. What are the ways to like diagnose that so that the next time you could try something, because obviously the models are getting better and better. So how can you
Indeed.
leverage the information in the future?
Yeah, that MIT study is something that's so cited to me so often, obviously being a governance company,
Like 3 times a
and
day, probably.
3 times a day. I hate it and I love it because it gives me something to talk about, but it really kind of brings to the forefront the kind of misconceptions that are out there in the market. Just because you didn't deploy doesn't mean you didn't learn something from the experience. 95% or whatever the number is in that study of sandbox POCs that never made it into production does not mean it didn't return any tangible ROI because there's so many learnings that are taken from each failure. I mean, this is almost just a lesson in life. Like you don't do something and fail and not learn something from it. So you need to have those good governance frameworks in place so that as you're going through POCs, you have a defined set of KPIs that you're trying to hit. And when you miss, you need to understand why. So in the context of hiring, the main ones are, the bias outputs of the LLM model, the accuracy and robustness of the recommendations. Does it align to the KPIs specifically of the business? And how often does a human have to override a hiring decision that was, or a decisioning point that was made by the AI? If those are not being hit, ask yourself why. It could be something as simple as prompt engineering or system prompt engineering. It could be your training data is not correct. It could be the technology is wrong. You don't have enough bandwidth in terms of your pipeline in to inform a great decision. Or maybe you as a business have not quite defined what good looks like at a framework level. There's so many things that can be taken away from each of those potential failures in a deployment. So I do not I agree with the quantitative nature of that study, but don't take that as AI is failing. It's the rhetoric around it was wrong. People need to define what AI success looks like in order to get it past that the finish line or the starting line, I should say, of AI deployment.
Roger, let's try to get one more in. I work at a law firm, and there is understandably a lot of risk aversion.
Mhm.
Should we be more aggressive? Do we, get to stand? Do we stand to get left behind if we don't figure it out successfully soon? Where are we on that kind of inflection? I think right
Yeah,
now.
I think every organization should be looking for areas that AI can be deployed because realistically speaking, the ones that have put a good amount of thought into the frameworks that they want to deploy, where they want to use AI, they are the ones that are pushing that
The
line
curve, the
up on that
difference.
graph exactly. So it's something that you do need to set up cross-functional teams so that you can get an understanding. Exactly, yeah, this one perfect. Get an understanding of different viewpoints from around the organization so you can see where AI is being deployed. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to rush to deployment, but you should start thinking where, because there will be places in your business, almost guaranteed, where AI can be deployed and will uplift. You just need to make sure that you're doing so in a structured and well thought out manner. We are in a great position at the moment, I would say, where regulation and compliance is very much still fostered towards innovating in the space. So there are, of course, guardrails and considerations you need to have, but that doesn't mean that you can't experiment and POC with relative freedom in this. And feel free to reach out to companies like Holistic AI because we can help you navigate that journey, identify areas of uplift, manage risk effectively, and move forward with confidence.
I love this, Raj. I think I double down on one thing, and as a reminder of all these kind of insights, just because you tried something a year ago, I would encourage everyone to try it again in some sense, as all these capabilities have gotten dramatically better, right? I mean, 6 months ago, it was helping you maybe write some code. Today, almost all code is written by the systems. I think is one example. And I think, Raj, just this point of thinking about the framework is key. Raj, this has been incredible. I know we're a little bit over time. You've given us a lot to think about, to take back to our businesses, to make the case, to foster a great culture. Any closing thoughts, things that you want to really touch on before we kind of like wrap it up?
Um, yeah, I would say that AI deployment is not a single person's job. It's a collaboration across different parts of your business. You need to have the business layer that's actually executing tasks on your behalf. You need to have thoughts from your legal team, your compliance team, and your executive team of where the risk appetite lies and the decisioning ultimately rests with. So create those cross-functional forums. And as I said earlier, the smaller the business, the easier these are to set up because often those overlap quite a lot. But AI is the great democratizer here. I think that whether you're a large organization or a smaller one, you should be looking for areas that you want to deploy, but have a think about what that risk appetite really looks like and where you are going to get the ROI on your deployments. And best of luck with it. I think, Sid, you had a great point. Something that didn't work a year ago, it could work now. So keep experimenting and keep trying.
I love this. Raj, thanks again for spending time with us. Thanks everyone for joining.